I don't have theme music for the opening, but this is part 2 of the assembly video for the Amanita Cottage Dollhouse kit. And welcome. We're going to put on the upper floor. Yay! So let's get this started. These are what I call the giraffe pieces, and I had some fun putting faces on them because I thought they were kind of cute and they look like giraffes. And yeah, so I spent extra time on Lightburn making little faces for making a little face and putting it on the giraffe head. But this is where the mushroom cap and the second floor merge. So we are going to put on the ribs, so to speak, the studs for the second floor. It's pretty simple. They just lock in place and you just glue them really well, clamp them in place, and let them dry thoroughly before we move forward with any other step. Up against the chimney, you want to glue them straight to the chimney. Make sure that they're nice and stable. If you notice that on the chimney and the front door, these are parallel as opposed to slanted as they are everywhere else. And we want to keep that in mind when we are finishing up the roof. So I am just putting them on one by one. This kit may seem complicated. It has a lot of parts, but most of those parts are pieces of one whole part. Every one of those ribs are really one big part. I just have a small laser bed, but also installing the second floor one separately from the first floor is necessary because we need to put the floor in for the second floor. And we can't do that if we had the whole giraffe, so to speak. But they are pretty cute, the giraffes. Okay, so now we're getting into the second half of the house. Now, if your studs below are not vertical or plumb, this will affect your roof rafters and it will affect everything else. There can be some adjustment, but you need to be careful because that thin little part of the neck can break pretty easily if you manhandle your roof rafters, which you're going to see pretty soon, your beams. So just be gentle and make sure that these are glued liberally and clamped in place. Now those are quilt clamps, clips, and I use them for miniaturing all the time. They are the perfect size clamp to mess around with. And then I have some actual hardware clamps, and I have my F clamp. Now the F clamp is extremely valuable in this process for a number of applications. So I do recommend that you invest in one of those if you're a kit maker, but especially with this kit. But you can probably use masking tape in place of an F clamp if you don't have one. So these are all in place, and I'm going to let these dry pretty thoroughly, and I'm adjusting the little loose kind of broken pieces from the first floor. So now I'm going to assemble the second floor chimney. Now these little lines go on the inside. They are what allows the wood to bend to the curve of the chimney. So we're going to apply that, and it's a little complicated on how to do that. You kind of have to, I don't know, be ambidextrous. No, you just have to be a little careful. But yeah, you want to glue liberally down the side. Now you want to finish the inside of your chimney, of course, for the fireplace before you glue it. So paint it black, put in your bricks, but just make sure you leave space for the glue. And you don't want to go to the very edge with your finish. So you want to bring it in by 1/8 of an inch so you can make sure that the sides can be glued on, or the front and the back of the chimney can be glued on. But you definitely want to take care of that now because it's going to get really hard as soon as you enclose it. And that goes for the downstairs ones too. You want to finish that before the downstairs one, finish that before you go ahead and close it up. Now I've seen people use the insides of egg cartons, which has a really neat texture on it, kind of a rocky texture. I've seen them use that for a kind of a lightweight finish, and it looks great for bricks. And you can make stones out of it too, I'm sure, or at least large bricks or something like that. But however you want to finish your fireplace, do it now before you close it in. There you go. So now I'm just using a rubber band to hold that wood to the curve. And at the very top, there's a little bit of a gap, so I'm going to use my F-clamp here to make sure that that's firmly held down against the glued edge there. There you go. And we're going to let that dry thoroughly as well. Rubber bands are also super useful for this project. And I'm just making sure that it's square and making sure that clamp is nice and tight, and we'll let that dry. So it is now dry by some magic. I just snapped my fingers and time went by, and I am now going to install the chimney. Now I have all of the parts that are part of that chimney, including the mantle. Now the mantle has a tab now, and this was my test kit. I had to make an adjustment, so your mantle will have a tab. You can just pop it right in there. And I didn't do that with the first floor one, but I did it with this one. So you can go ahead and use that tab to put your mantle in. And you want to put your piece of fireplace trim on. Kind of gives that front a little more dimension, a little more interest. And we're going to put the mantelpiece on. We're going to glue it really well. And on it goes. Et voila. Now it's okay if it overlaps a little bit. Not a big deal. So we're just going to pop that in right here and glue it liberally both on the sides, onto the giraffes, and onto the bottom. Now don't worry about the seam. That's all going to get covered up by whatever finish you choose to use for your chimney. Now, my chimney, I installed it a little bit crooked, so most likely because my studs are a little bit set back, but I don't have the base that you guys have for your kit. So my studs move around a lot, and it caused a little bit of warping for my walls and stuff like that. So yeah, the base is going to stabilize everything for you. So you got to make sure you glue down your bottom floor really well to your base, and you shouldn't have this problem. But I will cover up that slant with the finish. I'll put some bigger stones on it. And I'm putting on some glue for the giraffes. There you go. And just let it dry thoroughly. I think I actually shimmed it so it's straight, the other one's straight, but it should be fine for you. So these are the spacers. Now, because my walls are warped, I had some issues with fit on this one, so it took a little while to get these to fit. I had to do some adjustments. But again, if they are too big, sand them down. They should be exactly the same size as the ones below floor, and so they should be consistent all the way around. But if they are too big, just sand them down. And if they are too small, see if you can switch them up. They shouldn't be too small, but if your walls are leaning too forward or too backward, there might be some issues. And you can see here there was kind of an issue. But you can probably try and use something else to space it if it's too small. But if your studs are in the place that they ought to be, they shouldn't be too large or too small. I'd rather them be too large because you can sand those down. If you have problems with any parts, contact me and I will find replacements for you. There shouldn't be any problems. I'm going to make sure that one more time to make sure that everything is supposed to fit the way it is, if everything is plumb and level and all that stuff. But I'd rather have a tighter fit, so don't force it. So I took out all the pieces for the dormer windows for the upper floor, and I am painting the face of this window. And I'm doing both sides because it's just going to be easier than having to reach inside the dollhouse and paint it and be precise when you're done and your dormer is made. It's just easier to do it now. And I'm doing the panes for the second floor. They're different from the ones from the prototype, and I made them a little more intricate. These would be really cool for stained glass, if you want to do stained glass on this one as well. They're really super delicate. Always treat the pin hinge with care. If the pin hinge breaks, I think I've said this on other kits, if it breaks, it shouldn't. It's plywood. If you're gentle with it, it should be fine. If it breaks, get a sewing pin and push it in where the pin hinge used to be. Use some super glue to lodge it in there, and then use a metal clips to cut the rest, the head of the pin off at about say about, I think it's a 1/16 of an inch. So you just leave a little 1/16 of an inch piece of pin embedded in the window, and that should act as your pin hinge. But the wood ones work fine. Just be gentle with them. They open and close great, not a problem. Now I'm also painting the tops and bottoms of the sills, which is also where the pin hinge goes. Don't fill that little hole with paint. Don't fill it with glue. Just making sure these are all painted beforehand so I'm not struggling later on to paint something or have it on the house and make it awkward trying to paint it while it's on the house. Now I'm doing the bottoms of the sill, and I'm also doing the inside of the sides of the window. The outside, it's not necessary because it's going to get covered by your exterior finish, but the inside you want to make sure is painted. I'm just giving another coat because it's craft glue, and craft glue sucks, so it doesn't have good coverage. I always recommend using house paint. It can't hurt for you to get some white house paint in a sample pot, and you can actually change the values and tints of it with a little bit of actual craft paint mixed in with it if you want to have colors. But I recommend house paint. House paint is much better at keeping detail and covering everything adequately. So that's my recommendation. And I recommend Sherwin-Williams. There's that other one. I can't remember. And they have their own stores. And I recommend Ball and Faro, or Faro and Ball, and Little Green Paint, I think it is. Little Green Paint. It's a British company. And those ones you can get small pots of samples. I am now installing the windows. And I also painted the round window dormer, if you noticed that while I was rambling about paint. And I'm putting the windows on. Now you will have real acrylic. I just used repurposed plastic from food containers. But yeah, because I didn't really want to use the good stuff for my demo unit. So my display unit. And there you go. So this plastic is good enough. It's kind of like the green leaf stuff. It's really flimsy. Actually, it's a little stiffer than the green leaf stuff, actually. But what I'm going to be using is actual acrylic for you guys, or plexiglass. There you go. And it will be cut nicely, not with scissors and kind of wonky like this one is. So there you go. We've glazed the windows. And now I'm painting this little piece of trim, which goes on the outside of the round window. Now there are lots of little circles in this kit. They are all separated into individual bags, and your instructions will tell you which one goes where. So my recommendation is to watch this video, yes, but to also follow your instructions step by step. There are some things that I did here that were out of sequence, and there's also one thing that I forgot to film. Or I did film probably and just accidentally deleted it or something. I don't know what happened. But that's the installation of the crown molding downstairs. I will put that in the instructions with the kit on how to install the crown molding. And now I am putting on the little half circle here. Now you can paint this a different color. It's really beautiful. Actually, I did it in the same red that I did the mushroom cap with, and it looks stunning with the red and then the white lattice in the foreground. It's really quite gorgeous. And now I'm putting on the H sill, and we're just sliding that on. Whoop. And I put liberal glue on there, make sure it's nice and glued. And then we're going to put the window into the pin hinge and make sure the glass is facing the back side. There you go. Oops. And this is the T-shaped one. And we're going to run a line between the two hinge holes. We are not putting glue in the hinge holes. Do not put glue in the hinge holes unless you don't want your windows to open. And we're going to put them into the pin hinge. We're going to put that into the little holes. And we're going to slide this assembly into the window. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. It's a pretty stunning window with all the lattice work, I think. That's my opinion, if I say so myself. All right, so now I'm going to put this down here and I'm going to start building the dormer. Now, between these steps that I'm showing you here, give things time to dry. Don't do like I do because it just complicates things. And so I'm going to glue this. I have the sill upside down and I didn't realize it yet. You want to make sure the painted side is up. There you go. And there you go. See how much simpler it's going to be now that you build your dormer. You're not going to have to mess with it once it's installed. And I am going to glue this here. Oh, I forgot to put glue on the side. Yeah. So there you go. Now my wood glue dries pretty quickly because it's coming out of this needle-nosed applicator. More oxygen hits it more quickly, and it dries fairly fast, and it gets tacky really quickly. But I also use Gorilla Wood Glue, which is really an excellent product. I'm not sponsored by them or anything. I just swear by the stuff. It's just so good. And it has a really nice tight bond. Once it's dried, it's pretty amazingly strong. So now I'm putting on these ribs, and on this one, again, let them dry thoroughly once you glue them, and glue them liberally on their little ends. Oops. And I'm going to install the little ribs. And just kind of, you know, put the one kind of in the middle-ish and then one on the end. There's no exact measurements on what to do. You just want enough that you can create the arc that you need. Now, the ceiling. I used cardboard to do this little ceiling. I mean, not cardboard, but heavy stock paper card. But I recommend that you use the finish that you use on the interior, on the dome on the inside, to enclose this window. And you should do it now, not when you install the window, because it's going to be really hard to do that once it's in. So if you're using the water putty or air dry clay or whatever it is you use to coat the inside of your dome, you want to do that now on this dormer. So just, you know, close up your ceiling and cover up those ribs. I just used paper card because I don't have any water putty right now. I have to go get some, and I'm impatient, and I'm not, you know, I want to get this video done before I go shopping. So now I'm going to do the dormer, and you will see the card, paper card, when I'm done to see what I'm talking about as covering your ceiling. But you want to do that first. In my prototype, I didn't, and so part of this dormer, if you could see inside, would be absolutely hideous because I never finished, like, I couldn't do the whole side and see what I was doing once it was installed. So just make sure you do it now. Just mix up a bit of your putty or get some clay out and coat the inside of your ceiling with the stuff. A nice even coat. And once again, put in the little ribs. Let them dry thoroughly before you do anything else. And yes, there's a bad word on my glue bottle. I apologize for that. I'm a little weird that way. So I'm measuring right now, and I'm going to make the paper card to cover the little ribs. So I don't recommend you use paper card. It's a little flimsy. Whatever you use on the inside, if you got the kit with the finishes, you would be using water putty, and you would use it like almost like air dry clay or whatever, and just mix it up to its nice thickness that you can spread over the ceiling of these little dormers and smoothen and make look like a little ceiling instead of paper like I'm doing here. But this is my display unit, so I'm not going to paint it. The only thing I finished on this are the windows. Everything else will be pretty raw because I want people to see the pieces and the parts and everything and the plywood. So when they're looking at it, so they can see the, you know, how complex the kit is or how not complex it is, how complex it looks. So now I'm putting this piece in between bay 11 or bay 10, I think it is bay 11. Actually, I think this is bay 10. I think I misnumbered the top part. I think I'm one number off, but yeah, it's bay 10. It's a wide, it's the one that's kind of in the middle-ish of the stairs, just at, oh, close to the top stair, but the wide one. Yeah, I think that's bay 10, pretty sure. Yeah, you can see the B10 underneath it. So yes, and now I'm just reinforcing it with some glue, and I'm using a F-clamp to hold everything kind of up against it nice and tight. And the dormer, the round dormer, is going to sit on that. In the meantime, while that's drying, I'm going to install the main dormer. Now, there's a curve on the back of this dormer, and you want to match that curve, but it's maybe like a 1/4 inch above the giraffe's chin, if that makes sense. So you want to just slide that in, push it up against the, you know, the chin, and it should end up about a 1/4 inch above the chin. And the curve should match, and you want to make sure that it is plumb and vertical. There's no slant to it, and I'm carefully adjusting it as I go along. And you want to glue it to the sides of the giraffe heads. Try not to get too much glue in the notch, what that is, their little horns, because you're gonna install a rafter on there. So there you go. I'm checking to make sure it's level, and now I'm going to clamp it in place nice and firmly. I really like the lattice work on this window. It's so pretty. Okay, now I'm going to install the floor piece for the second floor fireplace. The skirt, the apron. There you go. And I'm installing what I call the nose on the fireplace. The upstairs fireplace. That is where the mushroom cap kind of crosses over where the fireplace punches through it. So, yeah. So just glue that in and tape it there and make sure that it's in place. So now I'm going to install the dormer. And I want to push this up flush. It has a little curve as well. Match that curve to the curve of the back of the giraffe heads. That makes sense. Just make sure that you glue it in really well. Lots of glue. This Gorilla stuff is no joke, I tell you. Most of their products are pretty amazing. Okay, and you want that in there, like so. So we've got both dormers in. There you go, give you a better view. We're getting there. And just another view. Okay, now I'm going to soak the upstairs walls. They're like wainscot. They're much smaller. And now that you've done the downstairs, this is going to be a snap for you. Now my first 2 beams were off, so my walls are a little leany, but that's my fault, and I fixed whatever issue there was with that, so you shouldn't have the issue. And with your base, you shouldn't have any leaning or flexing of your floor. And I broke that off because the wall is pushed in so much that it actually took a 1/4 inch of square inchage off of the wall. So rather have it too big than too small. So if you have any issues, you can just trim it up. And especially when they're wet, you can just use scissors, which is nice. So I'm just installing these, putting a tack to make sure that they're up against their studs. Yeah, those poor giraffe faces are going to be covered up forever. They'll be a little secret hidden inside your walls. There are 4 of them in there. Okay. And we're going to do number 4. Now, lines out, although somebody did suggest to me that if they wanted to have kind of a paneled wainscot look, that they could just flip it around. I can't guarantee that all the lines are going to match up though, but with the trim, it probably would be forgivable. So if you want the vertical lines, just turn your thing around, but there's still a number on there. And that number is going to show. So I designed it so that the lines go on the outside so that this thing curves easier and it doesn't break. And it is best that you put the lines out. As you can see, there's a number 6 on there. You can't really make that go away. And no, I'm not taking the numbers off because that's part of the kit and part of the instructions, and it'll be hard to identify the pieces otherwise. So I've got that all in there. And now I'm putting in the little piece of trim that is going to cover up the separation between the first and second floor walls. I'm soaking that. But in the meantime, I'm going to put in, while it's soaking, I'm going to put in these little pieces of trim. These are covering up the gaps between your wall panels and also adding some visual interest. It really cleans up everything. Trim and paint, the most forgiving things. That's why it's okay that it's not perfect, because we have trim to cover things. And it can't hurt for you to go to your local craft store and get some basswood strips so that you can do your own coverage of things that, might be bothering you or something, Just having a little extra wood on hand never hurts. But I have tried to provide for all of these things. The only thing I didn't do is provide you flooring to cover up the joints between the quarters on the floor. Also, your flooring should go over the last step and cover up any gap there is between your staircase and your floor. Now, right now I'm covering all of the joints on the walls, and I'm also putting one on the end. But there's going to be 1 decorative one and 2 covering up the sides of the fireplace as well. Oops, whoops, sorry about that. Somebody on Discord is bugging me. All right, so I'm going to put that in there. Yes, I am too old for Discord. I'm like the oldest person on the server. It's kind of embarrassing. But uh-oh, it's going to do it again. Okay, there you go. And I put some on each side of the fireplace. Once again, you want to decorate everything. Now, I actually installed this piece of trim upside down. I don't know why. The little curved profile needs to go on the outside. Now, you may need to trim around the round window in the stairway. And the crown molding, which I did not film, but it is in the instructions from downstairs, matches that profile. So you might need to trim your bottom of this piece right here so that it can go around the stairway window. But I put this upside down. I don't know why. I don't really care, but you might. But that profile matches the crown molding downstairs because there's like a little lacy edged kind of profile on the wood here. The straight edge should be facing the top. But that covers up the gap, creates a little visual interest, and I am now using a little clamp to make sure that it is pushed into the curve. You can use masking tape too, whatever you need to do to push it up against the walls and make sure that it's fixed and glued there. I used a little clamp. All right, now we're going to put on the rafters. Now I am doing all of the rafters except for the ones next to the chimney and the dormer. I'm doing all of those first. These are the long ones. There's going to be 3 different sizes of rafters. There's going to be long ones, medium ones, and small ones. There's 14 long ones and 12 long ones and 2 medium ones and 2 short ones. So there should be 16 rafters total. And I'm putting them in and I'm clamping them very well in the front and 2 on the back to make sure that it is clamping down where it ought to be clamped. Now some of these rafters may run into each other depending on whether your walls are, perfectly plumb or not. Just try and work around them. There's going to be nothing holding that center together. It's all going to be loose. It doesn't matter because it's all going to get covered up and tied together by the mesh and all that stuff. So just try and get them to work together as best you can. And if some of them are, too low or too high, you can actually glue them, push them back and glue them to one that's in the right place. However, do not wrestle them too much because, again, look how thin that little neck is on that giraffe. You can break those. I mean, you can fix it with glue, but I'm just avoid breaking them. So you can see I'm adjusting the first 2 because the first 2 are pushing down too much because of the wall not being plumb. See, I'm messing with them a little bit. And I have installed all of the long ones right now. So I'm making sure that they are glued and trying to arrange them so that they're not hurting each other. Now these are the small ones and these go on the dormer. And you want to glue them to the side of the dormer, the giraffe head there, but also glue them at the top here and clamp them. Make sure they're glued to the rafters that they touch. And the same with the chimney. Chimney ones are the medium-sized ones, and you want to make sure that those are not only glued to the giraffe head, and these ones are just like the other rafters. They don't have anything up against them like the dormer. So make sure they're glued well, and then you want to glue them to that rafter right there. Glue that one to that rafter, and glue that one, this one, to the other rafter. And you might have to manhandle them a little bit if some of them are higher or lower, but just be careful that you don't break the little giraffe's neck. That would be tragic. Now, most of these rafters, if they're in the right place, should just fall into a nice star shape. Now, these are the spacers that came with the dormer pieces. I'm using an F-clamp to push these together to make sure that it pinches those spacers in there really well. And I'm going to glue 3 spacers in there. These are just to give the mesh more surface to adhere to without, having droopy areas. You want to have a nice tight mesh. So, excuse me. And there you go. Just glue that really well. See, I'm gluing it to the rafters, and then I'm also gluing the little the little spacers. And you want to do the same with the chimney side. Just making sure that the curve stays consistent and there's a nice surface. And I'm clamping those on just to make sure that the glue connects them. And we're going to do the same thing over here. With the original Amanita Cottage, I made a little metal insert for the chimney top, and I put like that smoking stuff in there that you light up and it makes smoke, and I did a little video of smoke coming out of the chimney, which was pretty cute. Okay, so now I'm doing the same thing here. And by the way, I took the F-clamp off, but it's like almost a seamless transition, but I did let it dry. It was dry when I took the F-clamp off. And once more, and it doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be a surface. Whoop. Yeah, it's not super tight, so I'm tightening it a little bit. There you go. And they might be crooked, but again, all of this is getting covered by the mesh and your finish. So, and here I am gluing those intersections. And this one, I am clamping it because look how much lower that rafter is. Those first two rafters in bay 1 and bay 2 are really off kilter, and that's my fault because I pushed them too far forward when I was making the first floor, and that little mistake on the first floor has caused kind of a cascade of issues. So yeah. And that's just me messing with I'm trying to clamp it so that the other one is in the right place. There you go. All right, so now we're going to do the opening arch up here, and there are 3 pieces. I actually forgot the 3rd piece and I had to do it the next day. But here you go. And that is basically what is going to support the roof over your dollhouse opening. And so here I thought I was done. And then the next day I'm like, what's this piece right here? When I came back in, it was still sitting by my laser. So, yeah. So you can see the rafters come together pretty decently. They don't have to be perfect. Here's piece number 3. Because all of that's going to get covered by mesh and held together by mesh. And here I am using clamps to hold these in place. And you want these to be up against the very top edge of your rafters. And now I'm going to build the railing for the 2nd floor, but I am not going to install it. I'm just going to put it in there, just drop it in there, because you don't want to install that until you are completely finished with everything else in the upstairs. So you also want to be able to paint it beforehand and all that stuff. But when you're working with the finish on the inside, so you're, whatever putty you're putting on the ceiling, whatever plaster, and I'm air quoting, you're doing on the ceiling, you want to do all that before you put your railing in because it's just going to get in the way. So I'm just building it ahead of time so that it's built. And you can wet it. You don't have to, but I would much prefer you wet it. You can see it bends a lot better when it's wet. Less likely to snap those little tiny twig designs on there. Yeah, it's a tree that's lying horizontally. It's hard to tell, but and you install the edge here. But yeah, wet it down. I forgot to show that part. And glue liberally. Now that curve is just like the stairs. It doesn't, it's kind of a wonky curve. It's not, the curve is where it's supposed to be at the bottom, but at the top it's kind of resisting. So we're going to use an F-clamp to force it into place. And we're going to let it dry. My F-clamp was just big enough to do this, but you might want to use like a piece of masking tape and kind of draw them together. The masking tape has a tougher time sticking to wet wood. So, yeah, see, I'm pulling this together, and then I'm going to glue the handrail on, and that will pin it in place. So I'm doing a little test fit, and we're going to glue that on. So I'm using the F-clamp to hold the shape, and then once this is clamped to the handrail, it will hold its own shape. I decided to use the real clamps instead of the quilt clamps because they're not big enough or strong enough to, well, they're pretty strong, but I don't think the little jaws open wide enough. So here you are watching me holding it in place for no other reason than just to hold it in place. And then I'm like, oh, I should get clamps. So I probably should have just edited this whole part out. But here are the real clamps, and I am using them to hold everything down. I'm putting them on very gently. And at this point, you probably don't even need the F-clamp anymore because the hand railing is what holds the shape with the clamps. And when the glue dries, you'll have your curved railing. And you just want to keep it unglued. You don't want to glue it into the house until you're done with everything. So put in your flooring, paint your put in your ceiling, then paint it or do whatever you're going to do with it. And then when you're done, then you paint your railing whatever color you want to paint it. Get the front and back because it'll be impossible to get the back if it's installed. Not impossible, but it'll be really hard. And then install it once you put it on the flooring. I used hardwood veneer for flooring. You can get it in flat sheets or you can get it on a roll. On the roll, it's kind of cool because you can make it look like plank flooring. And you can use an iron to install it. I have one of these little teeny tiny little craft irons. But you could use a Cricut iron or I guess a regular iron, but it'd be hard to get it in to the corners and stuff like that. But that's an option. You can also use contact cement to install it as well. But hardwood veneer also cuts on your Cricut if you have a Cricut. Some types might crumble, but some types work fine. You just have to kind of figure out which one works best. But you can do like little parquet type stuff, or pieced flooring or whatever, using your Cricut, even curved pieces, I imagine, depending on the hardwood again. Lots of options. The first Amanita Cottage, the original, I used the little stir stick type craft wood, and I whitewashed it. I stained it and then whitewashed it, and it made it look very shabby chic, cottagecore shabby chic. And now I'm installing these little pieces of trim. Kind of gives the railing a little more weight and a little more elegance, I think. All right. That was the last piece. Now, if you look at the crown molding, there it is. And that was the last piece. So now we're going to go on to finishes on the next video. And you can either get the kit with the finishes that I use on this kit, or you can get your own finishes. It's up to you. There's two price points on this. So there you go. Next video soon.